Bounced a check and forged their name on the business account. KARK4's Marcy Manley started to dig into the pastor's background. Marcy, you were looking for any history of financial crimes.
That's right, Ashley, but what we found was a whole lot more, including court records that date back more than a decade. It appears to be a situation of multiple identities, big secrets, and surprises no one is happy about tonight.
This is the check from Regions Bank.
According to Brenda Blakely, she has trust issues with her spiritual leader.
Who would worry about going into business with their pastor?
She claims Bishop Jacob Taylor, the pastor of her church, built her and her husband out of seed money for a barbecue business they were beginning with him.
He's supposed to be there to be your friend, supposed to be there to listen. You shouldn't have any trust issues.
When we started digging into Jacob J. Taylor's history, in every instance, including the Department of Correction, the name Carlos Norwood came up as well. Convictions ranged from hot checks and forgery to felony sexual assault.
Anybody in the religious field that you hear about stories, but he honestly seemed like a pretty good guy when we met him.
When we typed in Jacob Taylor in the sex offender registry, nothing came up. But enter Carlos Norwood, and a level 3 sex offender pops up.
Didn't know anything about Carlos Norwood.
We showed the photo to church members and those living in the neighborhood. All confirmed the sex offender registry photo was the man they knew as Bishop Taylor.
How could you even have a ministry and you're a registered sex offender?
Taylor's Power Pack International Ministries is registered with an address on Lynch Drive in North Little Rock, 2 doors down from a child daycare center. According to the community, children regularly attend Taylor's new church.
He was talking about a youth ministry.
Yes, opened up a youth ministry after-school program, and we're all excited because now we have somewhere for the kids to go to.
He's class 3. He shouldn't be around any children at all.
Level 3 sex offenders are restricted from working with children, and according to state law, reporting a change of address means changing any place of employment or a place an offender spends a substantial amount of time.
It's just really hard to tell who you can trust nowadays.
Those in this community feel they've been duped and that ultimately Jacob Taylor or Carlos Norwood have put their families in danger. Now, we spoke with Bishop Jacob Taylor by phone. He told us Carlos Norwood is his twin brother who lives in California. After that conversation, we followed up with the Little Rock Police Department. They tell us just today, Carlos Norwood called into the department to check in. And according to the Department of Correction and the court system, in every instance of Carlos Norwood, there is also listed the alias of Jacob Taylor. Ashley?
Would you even have a ministry and you're a registered sex offender?
A complaint from a parishioner about a bounced check, and KARK4's digging into the bishop's past leads parole officers to find sexually explicit images on a registered sex offender's computer. Now the pastor is behind bars. It's an update to a story we first broke last night. Marcy Manley has been following it ever since. And Marcy, it appears this pastor wasn't just keeping his sex offender status a secret from his congregation.
No, Ashley. Neighbors in the community where he lived say they have never been notified a level 3 sex offender was living next door. Jacob J. Taylor being held without bond in Pulaski County Jail tonight, but most of his neighbors knew him as Bishop Jacob Taylor, thinking he was a local preacher. What we found looking through his past is that Jacob Taylor's name doesn't appear on the offender registry, but look for his alias, Carlos Norwood, and you find a high-risk offender. The Arkansas Department of Community Corrections saying they believe Norwood and Taylor are the same person, and parole officers searched his house after hearing allegations raised in our coverage.
Contained allegations that were new to us and that hadn't been made to us. It was our duty to follow up.
And during that follow-up home search, officials say they found pictures of a sexual nature that shouldn't be in a registered sex offender's possession. For folks living in the neighborhood, they say they didn't know about their neighbor's double life.
Saying they're one person and they're really another, and they're, if they're saying they live in the light and they're living in darkness, it's definitely something that is concerning.
Little Rock Police Department told us yesterday they were investigating whether notifications were distributed to the community as required for level 3 offenders. As for Taylor, or Norwood, if you'd like to call him that, he's being held without bond pending a parole revocation hearing, due in large part thanks to those concerns raised by congregation members. Ashley, back to you.
Thanks, Marcy. And you can see Marcy's entire report on Bishop Taylor and the people who say he took money from them. That's online right now at arkansasmatters.com. New information on a sex offender posing as a pastor. Tonight, he remains behind bars on a parole violation after a home search yesterday uncovered sexual images on his computer. According to court records unsealed today, Jacob J. Taylor, also known as Carlos Norwood, has a history of using positions of trust to mislead the public. In 2003, he pled guilty to sexual assault for forcing a child in his church to have sex with him. Because safety matters, KARK's Marcy Manley broke the story 2 days ago. She joins us now. And Marcy, from what it appears, Taylor operating under the same MO here.
That's right, Ashley. In these court records, police also said they found a law enforcement badge and security guard uniform in Norwood's home in 2003. Those who live near his new church say he has repeatedly told them he's a retired state trooper. And we're also learning tonight he's kept his identity as Bishop Jacob J. Taylor a secret from Little Rock police.
Click on search.
This computer monitor
You can go into the non-mappables.
turns Paula Stitz's desk into a portal to track sex offenders across the state.
We have those that are constantly trying to evade, and these are the ones we like to find. We like to bring them to justice.
The case of Carlos Norwood's multiple identities, including as Bishop Jacob Taylor, is one of her more interesting cases.
Con artists do this quite often, try to use as multiple names as possible.
According to records, a judge agreed to unseal today. Reverend Carlos Norwood pleaded guilty to felony sexual assault in 2003 for having sex with a 15-year-old church member who was also his distant relative.
How could you even have a ministry and you're a registered sex offender?
Law enforcement says Norwood legally changed his name to Taylor in 2008, and it appears he has returned to his role as pastor at Power Pack Ministries in Little Rock, never mentioning to his congregation he was Carlos Norwood.
He said, you know, in my younger years, I had a little bit of run-in with the law, but, you know, I found God and I corrected myself. Nowhere did he say that he was a sex offender.
Under Arkansas law, the sex offender registry can include his new identity on the sex offender search page because it's considered an alias.
Our legislation at this moment in time, that's not one of the things that we're permitted to put on our website.
That's in comparison to Tennessee's sex offender search, which includes aliases of known offenders.
The legislature dictates what we can put on our website. That is not included in the information that they have told us that we need to put on our website.
So until a change in the law, some offenders may continue to exploit the system and hide behind an alias to keep their true selves out of the spotlight. Little Rock police followed up with us today. They hadn't made community notifications to Taylor's neighbors, saying he had only recently moved there. Neighbors say he's been living in that neighborhood since at least the beginning of May. He also apparently failed to report his volunteer work as a preacher and his job at McDonald's to police. Both of those are required to be reported, and instances of not reporting those are a felony. LRPD say they had no record of those activities.
I knew something wasn't right. I knew someone right because he wanted just kids.
Troubling allegations as a teen says she once lived with a pastor who, unbeknownst to her, is listed as a registered sex offender. Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight at 6 o'clock. I'm Bob Clausen.
And I'm Ashley Ketz, a teen from White County warning other families to be aware after a KARK investigation alerted her that she spent 6 months living with a man she thought was a pastor who turned out to be a registered sex offender. Because safety matters, KARK4's Marcy Manley speaking with this young woman. Marcy, she was in high school at the time she alleges she lived with this man.
That's right, Ashley. According to her, this piece of paper filed with the Pulaski County clerk gave a registered sex offender posing as a pastor the right to enroll her in school and be her caretaker. The only problem, her mother had no idea she had signed those rights over to a sex offender.
He knew what he was doing.
Victoria Alexander's mom signed this document giving Jacob J. Taylor power to oversee Victoria's care in 2011.
I knew something wasn't right. I knew someone right.
According to Victoria, she met Taylor outside his Cersei restaurant the week before, where he claimed to be a member of law enforcement and a man of God.
He was an Orthodox policeman and he was a bishop of a church.
She says he tracked down her mother, who was struggling with finances and battling a drug problem.
He knew that. When he seen how my mom was and seen that, he fed right off of that. And he knew when he put in a better opportunity for me, they were going to turn around. They were going to just say yes.
Victoria tells us she was sent to live with Bishop Jacob Taylor in Little Rock. And on the first night there, a red flag went up for the then 15-year-old.
Where's my room? Where's my bed? And he's like, well, your room's going to be in this one, but we don't have your bed yet. I had to sleep in the bed with him. I slept in the bed with him.
What Victoria and her mother didn't know is that Jacob J. Taylor is also Carlos Norwood, a level 3 sex offender. In 2004, he was convicted of forcing a 15-year-old church member who was also a distant relative to have sex with him on multiple occasions.
When I seen he raped a 15-year-old, I said, really? Just at the age, just everything he wanted, I was that.
Police back then also found signs Norwood was impersonating police, discovering a badge and security uniform in his home.
I knew for a fact there was something wrong with him, but it was just, I don't know what's wrong.
The way the sex offender registry works now, searching for Jacob Taylor wouldn't have revealed his history because aliases aren't currently published on the website.
He never told us that he was a sex offender. He never told us his past. He just told us he was Bishop, and, you know, everybody around knew him as Bishop.
Victoria saying Taylor never raped her because she threatened to reveal secrets that would shatter his public profile as a pastor. But she's afraid other victims might be out there.
That second room has stuff in it for girls. Like, he had stuff for me before I even got there. That's how I knew somebody else had lived there.
Victoria saying she escaped his custody after he was arrested for theft. That prompted her mother to bring her back home.
I don't want this to happen to nobody else, because this was literally, you don't know a person at all until their identity is shown like this.
After reading through sex offender registration laws in Arkansas, we also spoke with the Arkansas Sex Offender Registry Manager and lawmakers. While sex offenders are required to report their addresses, employment, and other details, they are not required to report or divulge if juveniles are living in their homes.
It's because safety matters.
There's a much broader public safety awareness issue here that is not being served.
One Arkansas lawmaker telling us he plans to address a hole in the law that may have allowed a sex offender to pose as a pastor. That offender going undetected until congregation members raised a red flag and we dug into his past. KARK4's Marcy Manley broke the story last week, and Marcy, this is now on lawmakers' radar.
That's right, Ashley, and according to State Senator David Sanders, it will be on the docket in an overall push for transparency and communication in the criminal justice system in the next legislative session. And according to him, this issue should be a pretty easy one to fix. It just requires giving the okay to share details that are already collected by the State Crime Information Center. According to law enforcement, Jacob J. Taylor changed his name in 2008 once he had discharged his 4-year prison sentence for sexual assault. Bishop Taylor is who his congregation in Little Rock knew him to be as well. But he was convicted as Carlos Norwood and appears on the sex offender registry as a level 3 offender with that name. Searching Jacob Taylor gives you no results. Other states like Tennessee disclose aliases or other names on public sex offender search pages.
Click on search.
But the Arkansas manager for the registry telling us state law doesn't give them authority to publish aliases or even legal name changes. Whoever the offender was when they were convicted is who they remain in the master registry file. Some lawmakers saying that should be an easy fix in 2015 to better serve the purpose of public safety.
When you have situations like the one that you uncovered along with the Little Rock Parole Office, it's public safety is not being served. So I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that we have the rules and regs and the laws right and make sure that they serve public safety.
State Senator David Sanders telling us he believes aliases and legal name changes are part of that public safety purpose. He and other lawmakers will be looking at what formal changes need to be made to allow offenders' multiple identities to be known. Now, Jacob Taylor was being overseen not only by Little Rock Police, but also parole officers. According to both agencies, he was reporting and updating his information as expected. However, those two agencies aren't necessarily capable of sharing the information that he had self-reported. That's another issue that Sanders plans to look at in the months ahead. Live at State Capitol, I'm Marcy Manley.
We just need to carry out the law.
A KARK News investigation leads a lawmaker and a state agency to pinpoint the plug for a hole in a system a sex offender has been exploiting using his double identity. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Bob Clausen.
And I'm Ashley Katz. KARK began looking into this man, Bishop Taylor, after church members complained about a bounce check. What we found was a man living with a new name and an old secret. There's a law on the books right now to expose his alias, but that new name was not available on the public website.
KARK4's Marcy Manley, the first to break this story. Because safety matters, she's asking why that portion of the law was missed and what's being done to make that information available.
He never told us his past. He just told us he was Bishop.
3 years ago, Victoria Alexander's family sent her to live with Bishop Jacob J. Taylor.
His whole family, his sister and his mom calls him Carlos. Why is his name Carlos?
What she and her family didn't know is Jacob J. Taylor is Carlos Norwood, a level 3 sex offender.
So I knew for a fact there was something wrong with him, but it was just, I don't know what's wrong.
Victoria's family, not the first to be duped by Norwood's double identity. Members of his Little Rock church also had no idea.
He said, you know, in my younger years, I had a little bit of run-in with the law, but, you know, I found God and I corrected myself. Nowhere did he say that he was a sex offender.
Up to now, searching for Taylor on the public sex offender registry would have left them in the dark. Registry officials initially believed Arkansas law restricted release of aliases on its website.
Gives me, and I think probably the public too, some pause that this wasn't happening.
After we raised questions, a state lawmaker and the staff at the Crime Information Center began digging.
That particular Sex Offender Registry Act is quite extensive. We just started looking from page to page and happened up on this one little line that said that we could add AKAs.
As a result of your reporting, I added another analysis to the mix, and I saw that in the statute that, in fact, it was a requirement to report out an alias.
In state law, in the section on disclosure of sex offender information, it states
Sex offender's complete name as well as any aliases.
And in this case, we just need to carry out the law.
The requirement for ACIC to collect alias information for offenders has been on the books since 1997, and law enforcement has always been aware of multiple identities for Norwood. A specific act in 2003 added disclosure of aliases to the public, which hasn't been happening.
Was it a lack of administrative knowledge or anything of that nature?
I think that any time you're dealing with the law, you're dealing with interpretation, no one, not any one person knows it all.
Do you think that it was unclear, could have been easily missed?
Well, you know, it's always surprising to learn that folks charged with administering law are unclear as with regard to the statutes.
State Senator Sanders saying this points to the importance of the state knowing what's in the law and reviewing broader questions of information available to the public regarding criminals in the system.
I think Arkansans should be ready to ask tough questions about our laws regarding criminal information and the sharing of that information, and really what the public today has a right to know and what they don't have a right to see.
Now that the registry knows the law allows aliases to be released, the fix is already in the works.
We're going to be able to do it a lot quicker than we thought at first.
Alias information is already collected by ACIC, and in the weeks ahead, a search will reveal them.
I think we're going to be able to turn this over very quickly. We're really excited about this particular change.
So the next time someone like Victoria Alexander comes into contact with Jacob J. Taylor,
You don't know a person at all until literally their identity is shown like this.
the search can reveal who he really is.
Now, sex offender registry staff say Taylor's case is uncommon, but it is unknown how many sex offenders might have aliases or use them like Taylor did. There are federal regulations regarding the registry. Arkansas currently not in full compliance with that 2006 law, but is working to meet those requirements. Taylor is headed back to prison on a parole violation arrest that followed our initial coverage. The state sex offender registry, prompted by a KARK4 News investigation, is going into effect with sex offender aliases now searchable on the site. Carlos Norwood had been posing as a preacher using an alias of Jacob Taylor, but the the sex offender registry didn't publish his alias, so those who knew him had no idea of his sex offender background. The registry vowed to correct the issue, and as of right now, aliases are appearing on the sex offender profiles to help keep the public safe.